Nicky JHABVALA just confirmed it, and it's bad news for this defense. The starting corner Washington built to anchor the secondary is in real trouble, and nobody knows if he's ready for Week 1 against Philly or if he already lost the job for good. Meanwhile, Drew Stevens is officially the new starting kicker, but he's the 20th guy to hold that job in 6 years. Does he break the curse, or is he next out the door? And Antonio Williams is stealing camp buzz as Jaden's possible WR2, but there's a whole room fighting him for it. Breaking it all down, raise hail. And okay, let's take this piece by piece because this story has been building for weeks, and I need y'all to understand the full timeline before I give you my personal read, because a lot of people are reacting to today's headline without knowing the full context behind it. Trey Amos came to Washington in the 2025 draft, second round, pick 61 overall, coming out of Ole Miss with the label of a physical, aggressive corner with quick hands and the mentality to play tight on a receiver without any hesitation. And in his rookie season, the kid backed it up. 8 starts and 10 games played before his year ended abruptly with a fractured fibula in Week 10 against the Lions. Pro Football Focus put him on their all-breakout team for 2026 based on what he showed before the injury. This is not some fringe player fighting for a marginal role. This is the cornerback Washington built as a centerpiece of their secondary going forward. The problem, and here's where the frustrating part starts, is that Amos has not been able to stay healthy since that moment. Throughout the entire offseason, he was dealing with what the training staff described as soft tissue soreness while rehabbing the leg. He started camp on the physically unable to perform list, the PUP list, and on August 7th, he was finally activated alongside edge rusher Dorrance Armstrong and punter Tress Way. That day looked like good news. Amos back on the field, the secondary starting to take real shape heading into the season. And then, exactly what always happens with this kid started happening again. Once he got some rhythm going, he got hurt again. It happened literally in his first full practice back. A deep ball contested with Terry McLaurin down the left sideline. Amos fighting for the ball in the air and landing awkwardly on the ankle. Dan Quinn described it almost word for word like this. It was on a deep ball that he and Terry battled for, and Amos came down awkwardly on the ankle. That is the exact mechanism of the injury, straight from the head coach himself. From that moment on, this has turned into a spiral. On August 16th, just 2 days ago, Quinn gave an update on the status of several injured players, and the news was mixed in the worst possible way for fans of this defense. Nick Allegretti, the starting center, is set to return to practice. John Bates, the tight end, is also coming back, but Amos remains out. Quinn himself explained it with language that honestly gave me more doubt than certainty. He said Amos is continuing rehab on the ankle, that he's dealing with soreness, that it is not a re-aggravation of the original injury, but that he is not there yet in terms of being fully back and going. And this is where the statement comes in that made me write this script today. Nicky JHABVALA, in an interview with 106.7 The Fan just hours ago, was as direct as a reporter who covers this team every day rarely allows herself to be. She said, word for word, that her concern is pretty high at this point, and she added something that stuck with me. She said Amos has had one practice since November 9th of last year, and the season is 2.5, 3.5 weeks away. And she closed with a line that sums up the entire problem. Even if he came back tomorrow, the question would still be whether that's enough time. Think about that for a second. We're talking about a player who has essentially not had a real training camp. He was not part of the full offseason program. And on top of that, cornerback is probably the position most dependent on reps, on timing, on reading opposing receivers' routes in real time, on all the tactical vocabulary y'all already know from me. Reads, leverage, handwork at the line of scrimmage. That does not get recovered by watching practice from the sideline with an ice bag on your ankle. And here's the part that genuinely complicates everything for Amos heading into 2026. Washington did not just sit around waiting on him. The front office brought in Rasul Douglas as a veteran reinforcement in the secondary. Douglas already has real mileage in this league. He already knows how to play boundary corner at a high level. And with every week that passes without Amos on the field, Dan Quinn's logic gets simpler and simpler. You cannot build your Week 1 game plan around a player you cannot physically trust yet. That leaves Douglas, Robertson, and Mike Sainristil as the three primary names in the cornerback room, while Amos remains in medical limbo. And this is not a small detail when you consider the bigger picture of this defense. Washington brought in Durante Jones as the new defensive coordinator this offseason, and every new scheme depends on starters understanding the coverages, the disguises, the pre-snap rotations. If Amos misses most of camp and the entire preseason, he's not just losing conditioning, he's losing scheme installation, and that's a disadvantage that does not get fixed by sprinting to catch up during 2 weeks in September. Now, my personal opinion straight up, I believe Trey Amos does not open the season as the unquestioned starter in Week 1 against Philadelphia. I'm saying that with full clarity, and I'm saying it with a specific date. By August 31st, when Washington cuts down to 53 players, Amos will be on the roster. That part isn't in question, but Rasul Douglas is going to be taking the majority of the starting boundary corner snaps against Philadelphia. And if I'm wrong, I'll say so right here on this channel next week, and I'll eat it happily, because I would rather be wrong with a concrete prediction 1,000 times over than hide behind vague phrases like wait and see. But based on what JHABVALA said today, based on the full timeline of this injury, and with Douglas already integrated into the scheme, I just don't see a path for Amos to catch up to the sync level that starting cornerback in the NFL demands from the very first Sunday. What I do want to make clear, because I don't want to sound like I'm burying this kid, is that Amos's ceiling is still very real. When he was healthy in 2025, he played like a corner capable of handling tough assignments, capable of covering opposing WR1s. That talent did not disappear because of a fractured fibula and a sore ankle. What does worry me, and this is just pure honesty, is the pattern. A player with 2 separate injuries in less than a year in a position that demands constant hip explosiveness is a player who needs his body to cooperate. And so far, his body is not cooperating. I genuinely hope I'm wrong, but as an analytical fan, I have to tell y'all what I see, not what I wish I saw. Okay, bro, I needed to get that off my chest because it's the heaviest story of the day. But hang tight, because what's coming next is the kind of news that actually lets us breathe a little, even with its own dose of drama underneath. All right, we all saw this coming for days, but now it's official in black and white with the team's transaction announcement on the table. Washington released veteran kicker Jake Moody this Tuesday, and with that, Drew Stevens, the undrafted rookie free agent out of Iowa, becomes the starting kicker for the Commanders for the 2026 season. And look, before I get into the tactical and financial breakdown, I want y'all to hold on to one single number, because to me, it's the craziest data point in this entire story. According to JHABVALA of The Athletic, Stevens is the 20th kicker signed by this organization since 2020, counting off-season free agents and practice squad additions. 20 in 6 years. Let me say that slowly again. 20 kickers in 6 years. That is not a position with consistency problems. That is, technically speaking, an institutional crisis dressed up as a minor roster footnote. Let's get into the competition numbers, because that's where it becomes crystal clear why Stevens won the job. In camp practices, Stevens connected on 43 of 48 field goal attempts, an 89.6% clip. Moody finished at 36 of 47, 76.6%. And in the preseason game against Miami, both of them converted their only attempt, but the way they did it told 2 completely different stories. Moody's 29-yard attempt hit the upright before going through. More a matter of luck than clean execution. Stevens, on the other hand, connected from 41 yards with total conviction, no drama, no upright bounces. That contrast at a position where the margins get measured in inches and in steel nerves was enough for the organization to make a call that a lot of people expected to stretch all the way through the end of preseason. Now let's talk about Stevens' resume, because this kid did not show up out of nowhere. At Iowa, he left a legacy that is not an exaggeration to call historic within that program. 352 career points, the second highest total in school history. 76 field goals made, a program record, and the 4th highest total in the history of the entire Big Ten Conference. 12 field goals from 50 yards or more, another school record, and a 58-yard field goal against Oregon, ranked 9th in the country at the time. A kick that's burned into Hawkeyes fans' memory. This is not a kicker who won a job against a veteran by default. He arrived with the resume of a dominant college player, but Here's where I, as a critical fan of this team, have to ask the uncomfortable question that the official team statement is never going to ask. Why does Washington keep ending up here over and over again? Because we're not talking about an isolated problem, we're talking about a 6-year pattern, and when something repeats itself that often, the problem is almost never simply bad luck with individual kickers. The problem, more often than not, is systemic, a lack of continuity and coaching staff specialized in the kicking game, a lack of institutional patience to let a young kicker stabilize without the pressure of a single miss sending him right back out the door, and an internal culture where the position gets treated as disposable instead of as a piece that actually needs real development. And that leads me straight into my opinion on what Washington should do differently this time, because decisions without any learning attached are just the same wheel spinning in the same spot. Stevens is a rookie. He's going to miss field goals at some point during the regular season, guaranteed. It is mathematically impossible for that not to happen. The real question is what the organization does when that happens. If Washington gives him a long leash, if they understand that a young kicker's development is not linear, that's when Stevens has a genuine shot at breaking this cycle of 20 kickers in 6 years. But if after one bad week with 2 straight misses, they're already reaching for the phone looking for kicker number 21, then this repeats exactly like it always has, and come January, we'll be having this exact same conversation with a different name attached. My prediction with a specific date, because that's how we play it on this channel. By the end of the 2026 regular season in Week 18, Drew Stevens is still the Commanders' starting kicker. I'm saying that with moderate confidence, not blind confidence, because this position's history in Washington forces me to keep my feet on the ground. But the numbers he put up in camp, the mentality he's bringing, and the fact that the organization declared him the winner earlier than expected, with plenty of time to spare before facing Philadelphia, tells me there's a real intention towards stability this time, not just another emergency patch job. Oh, and before I move on, quick note that also came out in this same wave of roster moves. Washington also signed veteran linebacker Chris Barnes, who brings 6 seasons of experience split between Green Bay, Arizona, and Carolina, on top of adding depth on the defensive line and at tight end with a few other minor signings. Nothing that changes the direction of the season, but definitely a sign that Adam Peters' front office is still working the entire roster, not just the high-profile positions. All right, fam, after all that tension with Amos and all those numbers with Stevens, I've got something that genuinely puts me in a good mood, and this one's straight for everybody building their fantasy football squad, because there's a Commanders rookie who's making noise, and it keeps getting louder. I'm closing today's video with something lighter, but no less important for what's coming this season. Antonio Williams, 3rd-round receiver, pick 71 overall out of Clemson, is stealing the conversation at Commanders training camp, and that red is coming from analysts at the league's own official network too, not just from a fan in love like me. Ben Solak of ESPN wrote something a few weeks back that struck me as a bold statement, the kind you file away to check later whether the analyst was right or not. He predicted Williams could win Offensive Rookie of the Year, and his argument is not just empty enthusiasm. Solak pointed out that there's practically no real competition in Washington's receiver room behind Terry McLaurin, that Williams is going to be catching passes from Jaden Daniels, a quarterback notably better than the ones other rookie receivers from his same class are going to be working with, and that his playing style, an easy glider who is not afraid of contested catches over the middle of the field, is a perfect hand-in-glove fit for the Detroit-inspired offensive philosophy that new coordinator David Blau is bringing in. And what I like most about this story, honestly, is that Williams did not just sit on that nice preseason prediction. From the very first day of practices, he was already generating positive reports out of Ashburn, showing off that ability to manipulate defenders and create separation that defined him at the college level. And through preseason, he kept giving people no reason to lower expectations. Now, here's where I put on my critical analyst hat, because I don't just want to sell y'all the pretty narrative without context. Washington's receiver room outside of McLaurin still has real open questions. Treylon Burks is still fighting for consistency after an up-and-down path since he entered the league. Chigo Okonkwo, technically listed at tight end, is functioning practically as the team's de facto WR2, running open receiver routes and building early chemistry with Daniels in the red zone. And Diami Brown, Luke McCaffrey, Jalen Lane, and Van Jefferson round out a room with reasonable depth, but not necessarily that explosive impact player a high-level offense needs at the number 2 spot behind the star. That means the opportunity for Williams is real. This is not just preseason hype. If Williams confirms in September what he showed in August, there's a direct path to quality snaps, real target share, and yes, considerable fantasy football value for anybody tracking him in their leagues. Here's a comparison I like to make, and I'll leave it as a seed for y'all to sit with. That's exactly how Terry McLaurin entered this league, a third-round pick nobody hyped up enough before the season, and he ended up being the cornerstone of this receiver room for years. I am not saying Williams is automatically going to be the next Scary Terry. That would be pure hallucination, and I did not come here to inflate expectations without a base underneath them. But the mold of a mid-round rookie who shows up with a chip on his shoulder is exactly the mold that already worked once in this organization. My prediction with a concrete date, by week 4 of the regular season, Antonio Williams is going to be seeing a minimum of 5 targets per game consistently, established as Jaden Daniels' real number 2 passing option behind McLaurin. If it doesn't happen, I'll tell y'all myself right here on the channel, and we'll adjust the read. But with what he's showing in Ashburn, with the real void that exists in that room, and with an offensive system built for receivers who win over the middle of the field, I would not be shocked at all if this pick 71 ends up being the prettiest surprise story of the Commanders' entire 2026 draft class 8. And there you have it, fam. The full rundown of a day that had a little bit of everything. Real concern with Trey Amos, a confirmation that closes the book, at least for now, on 6 years of chaos at kicker, and a rookie story that has me genuinely excited heading into September. That's what this franchise looks like right in the middle of August. There's never a quiet day. There's never just one storyline. There's always layer on top of layer. And that, for better or worse, is exactly what makes following this team a roller coaster I would not trade for anything. Here's what I will ask of y'all. Don't just walk away with the negative part of today's video. Yes, the Amos situation is concerning, and I told y'all that with all the honesty y'all deserve. But this organization is also showing it can make tough calls like the one with Stevens, and it's also finding hidden gems in the middle rounds of the draft, like what seems to be happening with Williams. The 2026 roster is still taking shape piece by piece, and what we saw today is just one snapshot of a process that's going to keep moving week after week until Philadelphia hits the calendar. We're back tomorrow with more, because on this channel we do not stop, and trust me, the conversation about Amos is not closing after one video. We are going to keep tracking this closely until we get a definitive answer on who's opening at that starting corner spot. If today's video gave you something, if it helped you understand the full picture behind the quick headline you saw somewhere else, hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and tell me down in the comments, do y'all trust Amos gets ready for week 1? Or are y'all already handing that job over to Rasul Douglas? I want to read every single answer. Raise hail, and I'll see y'all in the next one.